CashFlow Diary Podcast, episode 321.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the CashFlow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other CashFlow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the CashFlow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you're here today because we're going to talk about something that I don't think we talk about enough. See, a number of you have been out there doing your thing for a little while. You have figured out what you are supposed to do, what your business is. It has matured. You have been knocking it out of the park for a while. However, while things may be great in the business, you haven't thought beyond the business, or you're not sure how to get beyond the business when it comes to your finances and money, or maybe there's a charity out there, or 2 or 12, that you'd like to contribute to, and you're just trying to figure out how those pieces can fit together. And today I have with me someone who can help you and I do those very things. So you should be a little bit excited because now we're going to talk about not just how to make money for you, but how to make sure that you leave money behind in the same way to go on and keep doing the great things that you're doing. I have with me today none other than John Bowen. He's the co-founder of AESNation.com. It is a rapidly growing community of entrepreneurs dedicated to accelerating their success while making a difference in the world. He also has a podcast, Accelerating Entrepreneurial Success, is the name of the podcast, by the way. And what you want to hear are some of the unique things that he does. In fact, he has a business model that I've actually never heard of before. He is that person. Have you ever seen a financial planner and go, I wish I could get a quote unquote second opinion of him or her? Well, he's the guy that can help you figure that out. He's the guy that has the ability to help you figure out how to build your wealth, like I said, beyond and outside of your business. And what's really cool is that he coaches many financial planners along and across the globe. And what's interesting is that today he's going to share that wisdom with you and I. So let's get started. John, you there?
I am indeed, Jay. That was a great introduction. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad that you are here taking the time to take your, I will say, easily decades worth of wisdom, and we'll try to get it all out in the time that we have. I don't know how successful we're going to be. Do you think we can condense like decades into minutes?
Well, we can indeed. There's been a lot of hard-learned lessons. We don't have to go over all the hardest learned. Just go out with the solutions.
Got it. I like it. So this being your first time here, I tend to ask everybody the same question the first time that they're here. Are you ready?
I am very ready to help inspire your listeners to really making an impact for their families and their communities.
Excellent.
And themselves.
Excellent. So I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs. Of course, you are one, like yesterday's superheroes. So, you got Superman, you got the Hulk, you got Black Widow, Wonder Woman, etc. And I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common, chief among them. Occasionally we get dressed up. We put on our capes and tights and masks, and we go out there and we use our special powers to help our customers and provide quality products and services, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I also think that just like superheroes, entrepreneurs also have a beginning, meaning before Spider-Man was climbing walls, he was just kind of taking photos and doing his own thing. So my question to you is, before being the lifelong entrepreneur that you've become, before, doing your work in Silicon Valley and working with high profile clients and doing everything that you've been able to get done, even before the podcast, what we want to know is, who is John Bowen?
It's a great question, Jay. And it's, his background. I mean, there's one moment in my life that really caused all of this, and it was back in my junior year of college. I can still remember it was May 5th, and I got a call from my
Wow.
dad. And up until that point, I had had what was a charmed life. I grew up in a small town in upstate New York. My dad and uncle owned a cast iron foundry. They were employing 400 people, pretty much had everything that I could ever imagine at that time. And, life was good. And other than my father kept on giving me the bad jobs, he's kind of grooming me to take over the company in his mind. And whatever the worst job was, and I can still remember in the middle of a winter storm, taking pig iron bars, putting it in a wheelbarrow and wheeling it over to be melted in the cupola, to jackhammering, melting iron on the side. And it progressively got a little better, that I was hoping this summer I was going to get a call from the summer job. I was going to get a call from my dad telling me that I was going to finally get an air-conditioned office job. Kind of a high-level aspiration. And get the call, and my dad says, son, I've got some bad news. The foundry's going to be going under. Your uncle's going to stay and wrap it up. I'm going to be going out looking for a job, and your mom and I have decided to get a divorce, and you don't have a summer job. And
wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, you take a step back, and I can still see myself, in that moment, Jay. And what came out was, I asked my dad, are you going to be okay? And it was a long pause, and he said, I'm not sure. It was at that point to see, someone who had been, relatively successful. Certainly in our community, we were a very successful family, and then have it blown away in really, overnight. And it didn't need to have happened. Had my father had the right advisors, all his money was in the business, the same with my uncle, and it created an awful lot of turmoil. Had he had the right advisors, the right framing, he could have weathered that storm. And it was at that point I really decided to be a financial advisor, and I wanted to work with people so that would never happen to anyone else, Jay. And that's really what I've dedicated my. I'm 61 now. I've done that for my entire professional life, and keep on making a difference.
Interesting. Okay. I like this because that's almost like true superhero. Everything's going fine, and then tragedy strikes and you decide to do something about it. I find it interesting that, so you grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. Did you, other than working for your dad, did you ever work for, another company?
Well, I did. I had two large company experiences. One, I worked for IBM in between grad school, and it was a great job because I met my wife of 36 years there, so I always have fond memories of IBM. And I was a pilot in the Navy. But beyond that, I've always started my own businesses. I was just starting a financial one, and also learning as a young man how to do acrobatic flying. And not surprisingly, Navy recruiters hang out there and say, hey, you don't even have to pay for this. We'll pay you to come do it, type thing.
Nice. Now, so a number of people oftentimes experience a little bit of trepidation when transitioning from the, we'll say, corporate lifestyle to doing their own thing. Where did your courage come from to be able to make that transition?
Yeah, Jay, I think I probably wasn't smart enough to know any different. I had been raised in a family that's what you did. My mother was fairly entrepreneurial as well, and we, I just did that. I did find, it was great training at IBM. It became very clear that I wasn't a corporate guy, and I knew, the benefits. I mean, some of the times that we don't think about this, Jay, is that, I do a lot of research. I've got a bunch of PhDs working with me for our various businesses. And, I look at the population in the U.S., and those come back to what we're talking about here, but, 320 million people, about 120 million households, of which 7 million households have over $1 million of financial assets. And what's interesting in our research is 1 out of 3 of those households are headed by a business owner.
Mm.
But where it really becomes very interesting when you look at having 5 million of personal wealth now outside of a business, it's 3 out of 4 are business owners. And then when you get to 25 million, it's 9 out of 10. So I've always known, just from the groups that I've met, all throughout my life, that business owners really have tremendous freedom. They have, the freedom from money when they're successful. They have freedom of time. They have the freedom of relationships. They have the freedom of purpose. Now, one of the challenges is we've got to structure our business so that we can accomplish all that. But having seen that and tried some of the core, I've sold a few businesses where I was then CEO of a large business.
Mm-hmm.
And other than staying through the earnout, and one day I didn't stay. And even, I had, all kind, I was doing investment banking, kind of the high end, private jet, all that kind of stuff. And what you find is, that why that's out there. And one of the greatest beauties that we all have, Jay, and you're doing this too, is we get to, we're not in business for more business. We're in business to build and support the quality of life that we want for ourselves and our enlightened self-interest, but for all stakeholders. We've got to take care of our clients. We've got to deliver tremendous value, our teammates, employees, our partners, any shareholders that we have. But geez, if we do it on purpose, we can really accomplish some amazing things, which includes, building this personal wealth so you can really do, make a difference, not because of greed, but make a difference, for the family that you love, the causes that you care about.
Indeed. And this is part and parcel, very close to my heart, because part of the reason, one of the things that, and again, I don't think I've ever shared this, but what happened for me a number of years back was I called myself retiring. I got really bored. I'm like, dude, I got to do something else. And that came out. What came from that was teaching. And then I was hanging out with some of the rich dad advisors, and I was asking, I was like, I don't have a motivation to do another deal, specifically because it's like, it's just going to be more money. And what they shared with me was like, well, why don't you just do a deal and give the money to a nonprofit or a charity? And I was like, now I have something to work for again. And it made me excited, to keep helping other people and to make things continually happen. However, there's something that you said that I want to make sure, because you said it so quickly, and it's mostly because you're so familiar with the statistic and the numbers. I think we often forget, things like this. And I think it was really, really important. I just want to make sure I understood it correctly. You said so there's 320 million households in the U.S. That's what I heard. Yes.
The 320 million people approximately. I'm rounding all the numbers off, obviously.
Sure. And that was 120, which means that's 120 million households.
That's correct.
Okay. And of those 120 million households, 7 million of them have $1 million worth of investable assets outside of their business. Did I understand that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay. So 7 million have 7 million of them have $1 million of investable assets. And of those 7 million, 1 in 3 are business owners.
Yes.
Got it. But when you said, and if I understood you correctly, then when you take that number and increase it to 5 million, 3 out of 4 are business owners. And then when you go to 10 million, it's 9 out of 10.
Well, the last one was 25 million. It's 9 out of 10. But Jay, this is when all of us as fellow entrepreneurs, when we see these numbers, we go, wow. And, and when we go to 25 million above, for the most part, the balance that didn't do it in business inherited it in business. So,
right.
The surest way to wealth in the U.S. and really around the world is to have an equity stake in a business.
Got it. And that's kind of where I was headed, because basically that simply means, when I hear you say that, I translate that into have confidence in an idea that solves a problem for somebody else, and work until you make it or some version of it continue to go out there and happen, which to me would be the essence of equality in some way, because anyone can have an idea.
Well, one of the things we talk about a lot today is income inequality. And,
yes.
It's really interesting because we do a lot of statistical work and so on. Some of the biggest income inequality is among entrepreneurial families. And what do I mean by that?
Mm.
Jay, do you have any brothers or sisters?
Plenty of them.
Okay, I do as well. Okay.
Yes.
And what happens, my guess is your family may not be that different than mine, is we've got an extreme wide range of a difference in income and net worth among our family members. And this is very common. And I think it goes to what you're saying. It's not only the environment. Obviously, born in the U.S. gives us a huge advantage over somebody born in Bangladesh.
Right.
But if we want to go ahead and make that commitment to be an entrepreneur, to create a business, and then everybody thinks, well, I don't have yet the capabilities. So don't worry about that. If you make the commitment and then you have that courage, the capabilities will show up. Shows like yours, you're going to hear different things. There's all kinds of insights and information, and taking that persistency and going out and making it happen, you're going to gain that confidence. And this is kind of a virtual sequel that you have, but you have to get started.
Yeah. Nothing stopped. I mean, nothing's ever going to happen until a sale is made. That's one of the first things that I was trained on was, you gotta do something. You can't just sit around and think about it. Now, there's something that you said earlier that I think was also, again, I don't know if it's common, but I think, from your perspective, you'd be, well qualified to comment on this. You mentioned that if your father and uncle had the correct advisors, they could have weathered, the storm, etc. And you mentioned really quick, you said all his money was in the business. So I guess my question is that common amongst the entrepreneurs either that you work with or entrepreneurs in general?
One of the things that once we start having success, we sometimes believe our press releases and our story a little too much. And
try not to do that. That's
right. Well, and we can keep on investing in our business because it's been a great return. And one of the things that we really, it's so important to not do is no matter how talented you are, when you have, the largest part of your wealth tied up in it, you're taking specific risk. In my dad's case, there were some regulatory changes. There was a big fluctuation in the dollar, and all of a sudden they weren't competitive and they couldn't afford to do all the environmental upgrades that they were being required to do and meet the competitive overseas challenge that they had. Now, had he had, and then all of a sudden financing dries up, had he had personal assets outside of his business, he would have been able to weather that storm. The same with my uncle. And it's just, it's again, we've got to be careful of, we want to invest in our business. We want to create and really make a difference. But at the same time, we've got to pay ourselves first, and we've got to do it in a way that allows us to accumulate. We've got to, not too silent partner that all your listeners know about, Jay, is, taxes. And it's constantly eroding. And to the extent that we can structure things, I know, your experience in real estate, there's tremendous tax advantages there. And there are a lot of other things we can do, kind of the lessons that the super rich, the people with 500 or million or more are doing, we can repurpose and bring down with all the changes in technology and the innovative networks out there.
Got it. Absolutely. Now, you bring up two very interesting things, and I'll let you handle them in whatever order you'd like. Is, there's this point, there's got to be an inflection point somewhere and it's like, at what point do I know as the entrepreneur going, okay, now I need to start siphoning something off for myself personally? Is this something I need to do from the beginning? How does that work? And then as a corollary to that, you mentioned that the regulation changes, the dollar did a move in the wrong direction, and financing drying up. All of those things are still risks for us as business owners today. So I feel like these two questions are kind of, connected. So what is it that we do, and when do we do it to be able to shield ourselves from things like this?
Yeah, no, these are great questions, Jay. And let's take the first one on the personal wealth side. And as we're starting businesses, there's that challenge because it takes, capital to go. Now, the nice thing about business today, you and I are talking over Skype,
Yes.
And it's a free service. We
Yes.
both have sophisticated studios that really don't, would have cost maybe $250,000 10 years ago. But
I know,
for
right?
today, anywhere from a few $100s to a few $1,000s. It's so, there are many, many businesses that don't require that much capital. They really require a lot of sweat equity.
Right.
And some technical knowledge. We've got to bring some value. But what I'm going to encourage everyone to do is pay yourself first. I mean, if this is, look at your whatever business you're going to be in, whether it's professional services, whether it's a manufacturing, look at your peers and really design it that you're going to pay yourself first. What we do as business owners so often is pay ourselves with whatever's left over. And when we do that, so often there's nothing left over, Jay, and that requires some discipline. Now, one of the things, having past experience as an investment banker, the value of your business is the discounted cash flows that you're going to be able to get out of that. If you don't show that you can have earnings, your value, I mean, basically you've got a job and nobody wants to buy a job. So we want to design it to be successful on purpose and have those cash flows. Second, you want to look, your question on financing. I mean,
yeah,
I want you to go back and Jay, I know you remember 2008, 2009 with your real estate experience.
Right.
And me and financial services, I was putting together a program for Lehman Brothers the Friday before they went under.
Wow.
It was so crowded with reporters out in front of their building, we couldn't even get in, type thing, without somebody, shoving a camera and a mic in front of us. And so, and at that point in time, if you wanted financing, I don't care who you were, it was almost impossible to get because the bank, many of the banks weren't there anymore.
Right.
And so this is why we want to build up personal, we want to do scenarios on our businesses. We always hope for the best, expect the worst. 2008, 2009 is probably a realistic scenario that we want to design our business and our life so that we can weather through that. And the only way we can is to build up our personal wealth. Got it.
Now, is there because I know someone's thinking, okay, John, I want to do some of this, but I'm trying to figure it out, especially someone who's maybe trying to get a valuation on their business. They're like, well, how much do I take? How much do I keep? Is there a rule of thumb when it comes to paying myself first? I mean, what would you typically coach someone who's, say, thinking about, they want to take some action on what you're saying, but they don't know exactly what that first step is?
Now, be careful as you listen to this episode, because there could be I've heard this before going on in the back of your head. And if you have heard this before, here's the real question. What'd you do about it since the last time you heard it? And if you're hearing it again and you haven't done something about it, that's called a clue. So do something. Be prepared to take some measurable action towards seeing change so that the next time you hear advice like this, it's like, oh yeah, I already did that. And it's more of a checklist. Speaking of checklists and looking for things to do to go out there to make business happen, why don't you pick up a copy of the book, Cashflow Diary, 10 Steps to Creating Wealth in Any Economy. Just go over to cashflowdiary.com/free book. Again, that's cashflowdiary.com/free book. Pick up a copy, read the copy, do what the copy says. Now, let's get back to the rest of the story.
The very first step, Jay, would be if you needed to replace, if I were going to hire somebody to replace me in my businesses, or you were going to hire someone, we would go out and look at the marketplace. And it wouldn't have anything to do with our profitability or lack thereof. It's going to be, what is it going to cost to have that person?
I see.
And ideally, I'd like to see that you pay yourself for what it would be for a job. That would be the ideal world.
Got it.
And then, to the extent that you can have because, you're delivering a job, but you're the venture capitalist. You're funding your business too. So there has to be a return on that. So what, it'd be nice. Take 20, 30%. Many of our businesses, we can't do that. So it's, the first thing we can do, Jay, is be aware of the problem. The second is begin to take small steps. And, 1%, 2%, 3%, whatever you can do, start doing it. Get that discipline. And it's going to be amazing when you start on this journey and you start accumulating wealth, how big a difference it's going to make.
Got it. So in your time working with entrepreneurs, because this is, I bet you we're gonna be talking straight to some people on this one. What would you say are some of the things that get in the way of an entrepreneur being willing to do exactly what we're talking about right now? Like what stops us? What prevents us? Why isn't it done more frequently if this is such a huge issue?
Well, let me give you two extremes. One, starting a business and you're just working really hard. You're just starting to have some success. And what we tend to do is we want to, find other revenue sources. So we start spreading ourselves way too thin.
Oh, I know nothing about that.
Yeah, no, none of us.
No. Never done that one. Go ahead.
Yeah, anybody who's been more than an entrepreneur for a week knows that one well. And what happens is that, you can eat up capital without any problem at all. And you can have, we mistake activity with success. And this is where it's so important to really have the financial models and keep track of where you are and be disciplined that you're going to have, X amount that you're paying yourself first. I mean, you'll have setbacks. You're going to have some wins too. And, but go ahead and doing that discipline. And what we find, Jay, that's the biggest problem is the discipline part. Then the other side is you have so much success, you go, it's going to continue forever. And I'm going to just keep on investing in this. I'm going to make even more money. And lo and behold, nobody gets through life unscarred. Right. Something happens.
Yep. I did that one. I did that one a few years back. Wasn't pretty, but we got through it. So yeah, I think I know exactly what you're talking about there. I remember that mindset because it feels like what can go wrong in that moment. You're like, I keep doing deals. Everything's going in the correct direction. And I'm sure a number of real estate investors, especially in 08 and 07, 06, who were there and around then can relate to that exact same feeling. So what would you say then for we'll call them the recovering entrepreneur? How do they prevent it? Today, do they open up an account and just start putting money in there and just go, okay, cool, don't touch it? Is it literally that simple?
Well, it's almost, it's a little bit more than that. The very first thing is, I would look at what are the major concerns I have. And, I have the privilege of working with so many entrepreneurs, and I'll make available to your listeners a study of 3,500 fellow business owners. But,
okay.
We went ahead and really did a survey to understand what were their big concerns. And, this is where we all have company, Jay. Number one, they want to make smart decisions about their money. It's at 93%. Mitigating taxes. It's 95% wanted to do that. I wonder about the other 5%. But, what was interesting, only 23% were taking any action, not only their financial advisor, their accountant, anything proactive, taking care of their heirs was 93%. And, most of them, the majority did have a plan, but their plan was so old and out of date and so many life-changing things. And the tax law has changed tremendously since they set it up. And then also protecting an asset protection plan. This is for lawsuits and divorce. Partnerships break up. Obviously, the more success you have, you're more likely target. Divorces unfortunately happen. And only 15% of the people have a plan. And then, this is where so often business owners, entrepreneurs, get kind of you're greedy. Well, 68% wanted to do something even more to support the charitable causes they care about. So I would look at those concerns, that framing, and then really identify whether, how am I doing on that? And how can I be proactive? And then in being proactive, it's not simply just setting aside money. It might be in the beginning, kind of that emergency fund. But then
Sure.
how can I set it aside on a tax advantage basis?
Now we're talking.
Yeah, that can really provide, the ability to accumulate in a substantial amount over, if I don't need it, that's going to be, what we want to build personal wealth is to fund, the liability of life. And what's happening is, longevity. Now we got longevity risks, Jay. You and I take care of ourselves. There's all kinds of research, if we can make it the next 15 years, that most of us are going to live a high quality of life to 100, all the breakthroughs in medical. So, now we've got to really fund that. How do we do that? So it's not only protecting yourself from adversity in the business, but, let's go on the positive side. We're going to have a great life. And how can we fund it to do the things that we want to do and we care about?
Indeed. I can remember back in one of my days before a financial planner, one of the things that inspired me to want to transition to real estate was I was sitting down with a gentleman who was his entire goal when we were putting together a plan for him. He was like, look, I just want to be able to take my wife out for an ice cream and movies. And if I could do that, I would feel great. Cause he's still worker or electrician. He had worked for a utility company, all these types of things. And he was just having trouble trying to put the, ends of months together. And I can remember that I know that was one of my decision points. Like, I don't want that to happen, which one of the things you left off the concern list, or maybe you just didn't get to it, and I was just curious about it, was no one concerned about the effects of inflation or a devalued dollar in any way?
Well, it's really the number one concern is making smart decisions about their money. So those are all the things. It's kind of like, the traditional retirement where most people aren't concerned, particularly business owners aren't concerned with retirement because it sounds like you tried to take some time off. When I was 45, I had a major liquidity event. We sold a business, two partners and we did exceptionally well and I didn't need to ever work again. And I tried that. And my wife got tired of me dragging her all over the world doing fun things. And 6 months in, she goes, you should really start another business. But
hold on. I find it funny. And people ask me this question because I'm like, you don't understand. I got bored. I got bored. That's what happened. I was playing with photography equipment and remote controlled helicopters. And I'm just like, I got to do something. So, but most people say they don't understand how that could happen. I find it funny that your wife's like tired of traveling, but yet it's the number one thing a lot of people want to go out there and get done, nonetheless. But yes,
annually we get together, Jay, and, we decide, what we want to accomplish the next year. And that goal for that year was she did not want to qualify for she was platinum on American Airlines. She did not want to qualify for any elite level ever again.
That's funny. That the goal is to not fly. Awesome. I can totally understand that because I think as humans we're designed to contribute and be significant in other ways. And once you reach a certain point, that becomes the major thing to figure out how to do that and transfer that. So, with that being the case, having to plan for inflation, because that's one of the big things that's always on my mind. It's one of my favorite reasons I love real estate because it gives me control over my tax situation and I can adjust my income relative to inflation simply because by changing rents, it's really, really simple to do. But my thought process or my question to you is, how does one make this plan in such, it's one of the things I've always found difficult is we're making a plan today based upon today's dollar. But you said it yourself. We are living longer. How do you make a plan that actually stands the integrity of time? In 15 years, technology changes every 35 seconds, and business is changing at such a rapid pace. That in and of itself just sounds like a job.
And it's the nice thing, I live in Silicon Valley, so I had the privilege, started my career in the late 70s. So I don't even think we referred to it as Silicon Valley then, and worked with some of the earliest entrepreneurs managing billions of dollars. So, I got to know these guys, and I look at, the computer systems that I have in my office now versus what I had the very first one. I
Wow.
bought a mini computer for about $200,000 that,
Wow.
my Apple iPhone is much more powerful and a little bit of a fraction of the cost. So, and it's not going to stop. And this is what's so great is we don't have to see everything. I mean, it'd be nice if we could, but we can't. No one
Right.
person can. But what we can do is we can choose to participate. And one of the things that I grew up in the financial markets, and what I'm a big believer in, Jay, that I like real estate. Real estate is, to me, a business. It's not a passive thing because it's an operating business.
Okay, hold on.
Go ahead.
You just hit such a hot button for me, and I know somebody was washing dishes, their dog barked in the background, their kid bothered them, something. I need you to say that again, my friend.
Well, I haven't invested in I built office buildings, invested in apartment complexes and so on. I'm here to tell you there's some work involved along the way.
Yes.
And, and what we all tend to do is whatever our background, and there's a lot of different ways of accumulating wealth, and real estate is a great way, to leverage and it's an easier way to take risk. But there's hard work, and you've got to be able to dedicate the time, energy, and get the experience to do it well. And there's specific risks, no matter who you were. 2008, 2009 was a tough time to be a real estate investor. 2001, right. I can name a whole bunch of times that they were. And it's the same with the financial markets. But what I like about the financial markets, I want to have as entrepreneurs, everybody thinks we want to take a lot of risk. We don't want to take risk. We want to mitigate risk as much as possible. So we're going to build simple and elegant businesses, stay focused as much as we can. Guys like you, Jay, and I, we have to hire people to keep us focused, but we're focused. And then as we build our personal wealth, what we're doing is we're doing two things. One, we establish our philosophy about the financial markets. And in my case, I'm a big believer in this concept of modern portfolio theory, efficient markets. So I own over 50,000 positions, different companies. And you could do this with index funds and other tools and so on. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be a lot of money. But by doing that, I know that every one of those CEOs is working for me. Now, I know they could care less whether I make more money, but in their own enlightened self-interest, they're doing everything they can to foresee the future that you and I were just talking about.
Right.
And, not all are going to be successful. Well, I don't need all of them. I know that I own the next Microsoft. I don't know which one it is, or the next Apple, or the next Google, or, Uber, Airbnb. But that's where, you can accumulate, and you do a diversified portfolio, work with a really smart advisor. And the big part here is they have to work with you on what I call advanced planning. And this is that other, we talked about making smart decisions about the money, but mitigating taxes. Yeah. If we can create structures, sophisticated retirement plans. So many people, Jay, this might even affect you in the sense if you own a bunch of real estate, you're paying a lot of insurance premiums for all the different things that you have. Well, set up your own insurance company, a captive insurance company. It's unbelievably attractive, gives you a lot of flexibility. And this is the type of things that wealthy people are doing to accelerate their success even more.
Yes. And we do pay a lot of insurance. That's for sure.
Well, and the one thing, I might just stick on the captive insurance because it's an interesting concept. When we survey financial advisors at the high end, about half are aware of it. But in a recent survey we did of just over 800 financial advisors, and these are top end advisors, only 13 had ever been involved in helping a single client with this. And this is where the missed opportunity is. I use the term pretenders. There's a lot of pretenders out there, Jay, that, they're not that they want to do anything wrong. That's predators. Here, pretenders are well-intentioned people who just don't know. They don't know what they don't know. And they so quickly tell you, oh, don't do that because there's something there. But you want to work with people that actually know what they're doing, that walk the path before you, have actually made it happen and done well by doing that.
Indeed. Now, I know that a number of individuals have enjoyed listening and can tell that you have a vast amount of experience, knowledge, and probably can help them. So what's going to be the best way for them to find out more about what you guys are doing and maybe connect with you guys on a deeper level?
So the very first thing would be to go to aesnation.com and download an ebook called The State of the Entrepreneur. Dan Sullivan of Strategic Coach and Joe Polish of Genius Network, two phenomenally successful entrepreneurs, and I worked together and we surveyed 3,500 business owners. And what we've been talking about is in that ebook. It's a fast, quick read, and it's going to really help you accelerate your success. There's also a scorecard there about maximizing your personal wealth. So you can take a look at kind of where you are and whether you should get a second opinion. See, what we do, most of us get second opinions on the medical side. And on the survey of business owners we just completed over the last year, 41% had gotten a second opinion on the medical side, and 2/3 of them thought it was worthwhile. When we asked on the personal financial side, Jay, it was only 11% had gotten a second opinion on any personal financial. 90% said it was worthwhile. When we survey people who have 100 million or more family offices, they do it routinely, and it almost always changes their belief. They'll be able to get access to more talent, to the right structure. So one of the things that we do at AES Nation is we make available second opinions as well for business owners, successful business owners. And I got to tell you, it just makes a big difference in making sure you're going in the right direction and you're working with the right people.
Well, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, if a doctor is recommending some high-level surgery that has lots of complications and could have a strong effect on your health, it would only make sense to have that same thing from a financial perspective. And that's one of the things I find unique about what you guys are doing is you bring that to the marketplace as, hey, let's get a second financial opinion, so that you can make sure. I mean, point, counterpoint. Worst case scenario, maybe the second opinion agrees 100%, but at least you have a compared to what, and you're not flying blind or just by a single captain.
Well, and I don't want them to go through what our family, my dad, mom went through. There's no need to do that. And by building up that personal wealth, we can take care of the people we love and the cause we care about.
Got it. Excellent. Now, as we wind down here, I have a question for you. I think your answer is going to be interesting to me. So let's pretend for a moment that somebody listening, though, is, they're standing in front of the superhero outfit store and they want to get into this game. They have aspirations of doing all the great things that we're talking about. And not only that, but let's say that they actually have the idea. It's been rattling around in their head for a little while. However, as you well know, they're dealing with that voice in the back of their heads, that voice that comes up anytime that we want to step into something bigger than our current place. We want to be great. And for some people, they're actually related to that voice, and that could be a challenge. My question to you would be, what would you say to that person if you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that right now, today, they would actually take action and complete and follow through on what it is that you would suggest, and they would do it within the next 24 to 48 hours? What would you say to them?
That's a great question, Jay. I've never had that one in all these interviews, conversations, and so on. But I think that if you're not already a business owner and you've been thinking about being an entrepreneur, and there will be no shortage, as you said, Jay, of people telling you, don't take the risk, get a corporate job, the whole track that we're all supposed to do. And oftentimes it's, spouse, significant others. They can't help themselves. They've got that training too. What I would encourage you to do is just do it. And I'm going to break two different ones, if it's okay, Jay. One is read a book. It's an old book. The Wall Street Journal put it in the top 10 small business books ever written. A fellow, Michael Gerber, E-Myth Revisited. Michael's a good friend. He just, I think he just turned 80. I can't remember if it was 80 or 85. I think it was 80. And just really talented, very inspiring, because if you're going to be a business owner, one of the things that we make the mistake a lot of times is we have some technical knowledge. And if by reading E-Myth, it's going to show you kind of the general framing, a very simplistic framing, but business can be simple. So, the idea is that we want to move away. It's simple initially because we're ignorant. Then as we understand things, it gets really complicated. Where wealth is made is when you move to the right side of complexity and make it simple again for those people you're working with, simple and elegant. And he does that well. The second is I would get in a group of other entrepreneurs, ideally ahead of you a little bit, some type of mastermind, group that you're hanging out with. Because when you're drinking friends, your buddies, they're more likely than not going to be entrepreneurs if you aren't. You've got to get in a group. Jay, I spend $100,000 a year to be in CEO groups, mastermind groups.
Right.
And I don't do it because I need people to hang out with. I do it because I get great ideas, great connections, and it's been worth many, many millions of dollars to me. So I would encourage your listeners to do that as well.
Excellent. 100% agreed. And yes, Michael Gerber has been writing some really good books and I love him too. So thank you, for just taking the time, to share your wisdom, your expertise, giving us an opportunity to go, grab the scorecard, all those types of things, because all of us are trying to become bigger, better, better. And you're out there enabling and making that happen. And as I said before, thanks for taking the time to invest your knowledge and wisdom here with us today at the Cashflow Diary.
Well, thank you, Jay, and I appreciate all the difference you're making as well.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means you need to go download the scorecard. That means it's time for you to actually take action. It means stop thinking about the estate plan. Do it, because there are so many other things that you want to go out there and do. You got into business for a right reason. Now let's see it all the way through. I know it's uncomfortable, but so what? We live in uncomfortable. That's the definition of who we are. Go out there and make it happen. It's been fun talking to you guys today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.